Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I am Hannah Broderud.
And I'm Luke Freeman.
And I'm Chris Providence. It's good to see you guys today. And I'm excited to dig in. So today we are going to talk about guest service, and customer service, guest service, the idea of service being provided to customers that frequent a business that supplies commodity product, right? What is the service level? Sometimes it's the only differentiator. I think about in the gaming world specifically, there's a lot of places where I can go play slot machines or play blackjack or, do the things. It's just kind of four walls in games, but what differentiates one property from the next? I think about maybe places where I buy lumber, places where I buy metal. We work with people in aerospace. We've worked with people in the lumber business. What makes those places different? Because I can buy 2x4s a lot of places. I can buy stainless steel a lot of places. Why do I buy from this particular company? And that's what I want to get into today. What are some of those principles where these organizations that can really thrive by being service differentiated? And I think it starts with understanding what the hell is service. We throw that word around all the time, but what is customer service, guest service? What, that idea, I think we talk about, but rarely do we take the time to explain what it is or how it's transferred. So let's start right there. What is service? Luke, you want to take that on?
Great question. So service is the value added effort on top of a product, or I'll say commoditized service like you described earlier, that people experience. So in the same way, we talk about employee experience a lot here. Someone's employee experience, they might be using the same, let's say point of sale software at two different retail organizations. So maybe they move from Starbucks to the Blimpies down the street, and they're using the same point of sale software, but their employee experience can be vastly different depending on who their manager is. And I think service is the same thing. A customer could come in and let's say I want to buy a new F-150. I'm going to get the exact same vehicle 30 different places, and I can get online and make sure they'll all pay me the same low price. So the only thing that differentiates the places that I would go would be the service, my experience of the purchase, my experience of the space, my experience of the people that I interact with.
Yeah. I would say, the way we talk about service, we kind of break it down into three components. And service and that experience that Luke describes is what happens in the intersection between meaningful relationships, responsiveness to anticipated needs, and the perceptions of quality that people form while they're interacting with a brand. So, relationships, quality, and responsiveness are what we would call the bounds of service. And if you imagine a Venn diagram, right, with three overlapping circles, in that center where those three intersect, that's when we are able to experience what we call service.
Yeah, and I really think it's interesting because responsiveness to a need is person to person, that's transactional. But this idea of communicating quality as part of that transaction, I think that's where we start bringing in the physical plant, right? So part of my service experience is that sense of arrival, It's, what does the space where I'm transacting within, what does that look like? How is the product that I'm purchasing presented to me, right? That merchandising aspect is part of that service experience. And it's as if, as I experience this space, as I consider this product, as I interact with you, it's the relationship. Now I'm starting to get proof that you care about my experience with this product. Is this going to suit my needs? And ultimately, it's that question that I'm answering, like, do you care about me? Are you here to help me? Do I trust you enough to do business with you? Like, those are the questions the consumer is asking. And it doesn't matter if you're in the casino business, the lumber business, the car business, the metals business. Like, do you care about my experience with this product? Like, can this product serve my needs at this time? And do I trust you to be the one that delivers it? And I think it's that obligation of building that trust that creates this need for like massive action and focus on the guest or customer experience. And there's a lot involved in creating an effective customer experience. We talk, about service profit chain and those things, but I'm going to try to constrict our conversation today because I know how many different ways it can go. But speaking to this idea of our bounds of service, the quality of the delivery, the responsiveness to anticipated needs, and the relationships are built through this process. Like, how do we activate service? Like, what are the fundamental principles? Let's get to some blocking and tackling, highly tactical. What do we need to focus on? Anna, you want to take that?
Sure. I'm going to start with sharing an example because Chris, I've heard you say this. If you've not experienced great service, it's hard to provide it, until you know what it looks like.
Right.
And so at the time we record this, I just returned from vacation in Mexico, and shout out to the restaurant Tuna Blanca in Punta de Mita, where I will say I experienced the most impeccable guest service I've ever experienced in a restaurant. And it was all the things, right? The responsiveness and anticipation, right? So I'm hanging my purse on the side of the chair. Immediately, someone walks up with a little stand to hang my purse on next to my chair, right? As soon as we walked in, we were asked the question if we were celebrating anything today. And well, we didn't have like a birthday or anniversary or anything like that. So I just said, well, it's our last night in Punta de Mita, right? And they're like, okay. And at the end of the meal, which was, by the way, the most incredible food experience I've had, with the most attentive and thoughtful service throughout the entire dining experience, they walk out with this huge, and this is kind of a thing they do there, but there's like a surfboard with spun sugar that writes something, and it said safe travels, right, with desserts on the surfboard. So that was the celebration of our last evening. But what I experienced was just a beautiful, safe, clean environment. I experienced a fun and friendly atmosphere where I felt that we were being paid attention to, right? And we were treated like we were special, right? Which I'm not used to, right? And so it was, but everybody, it was full. It was a packed restaurant. You can tell they do a lot of business. It's what would, here in the States, it's a very high-end restaurant because of where we were, prices were more moderate, right? It wasn't cheap by American standards, but it was, that level of service. So for me, just seeing the attention to detail, the ability to anticipate needs, and not just anticipate needs, but also that surprise and delight, where it's like, we're going to do something a little bit extra that goes above and beyond the expectation. That's when you really have that as a guest, that experience of, that's a memorable experience.
Yeah. I think about, I'm sure, what I'd like to ask the people listening is like, think about a time where you were exceedingly pleased with some purchasing experience, right? Maybe it was you were a customer at a restaurant or hotel, or maybe it was a local hardware store. But think about a time that you're pleased, and it has to involve one of those three domains. It's the relationship you share with an employee there, it's their level of responsiveness, or it's the quality of their delivery, kind of that soup to nuts sense of arrival to the physical place, that the kind of physical plant that you're in. But I think there's a way to activate service that comes from a very fundamental place. And when I remember just starting out and in trying to learn what it is I'm doing, right? I hadn't experienced service yet, but I was responsible for providing service every day. It's this idea of the big six, right? Like just fundamental, practical things that we can do. Like if I'm going to have a positive service experience, the place I'm transacting at is clean. It's safe. It's comfortable. It's fun to do business there. It's fast, like the responsiveness, and it's friendly, the relationship, right? And speaking to, I would say, cost of entry, like what are the table stakes? Clean and safe are table stakes. Like if it is not clean, do not open the door. Because we've said it before, smudgy door, smudgy brand. Like if there's fingerprints on the door, there might as well be toothpicks at the restaurant strewn about. There's probably straw wrappers at the drink stations, coffee creamer on the countertop. Like, yeah, like let's not do that. If it's not clean, don't bother opening the door. And then safety, like, little tips and tricks is like, man, how well lit is the parking lot? Right. So when someone's visiting at night, like, how does it feel? Do I feel safe coming into that establishment? And, like 1,000-watt bulbs are our friend, outdoors, and as many of them as we can get. So we want people to feel safe. Do they see someone upon entry? What's that feel like? And when we look at intention to buy again or intent to return sort of behaviors, like it's those two factors. Like it has to be clean, it has to be safe, or people will not come back. Like you only get that money one time. And that's not what our businesses are built on. So service businesses are built on loyalty, right? We need all of their visits, and the more visits we can get them to make, the more our business will grow. But it's this idea of clean and safe, our table stakes, comfortable, like people want to be able to move around, have elbow room, do what they need to do with the product, interacting with it in a way that best fits them. And then I think we get to those discretionaries, like fun, fast, friendly. How fun, how fast, how friendly. Like you really start getting into the culture kind of rubbing off on the customers and guests. But so much of this, and I want to restate these fundamentals: clean, safe, comfortable, fun, fast, friendly, right? 3 table stakes, clean, safe, comfortable, table stakes, fun, fast, friendly, a little bit up to you, right? So how differentiated do you want to be? And that's, I think, some of the dynamics. So as I lay them out like that, Luke, what's your takeaway?
Well, I pulled up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and just kind of looking at that as you're talking. I'm like, well, of course, right? At the bottom of that pyramid, right? Which the idea of Maslow's hierarchy is that you can't move up the pyramid of what you need as a person until you get whatever's below it, right? So physiological needs, need air, water, food, shelter, sleep. Safety is next, personal security, resources, health, right? And then above that, it's things like love and belonging and esteem, and eventually self-actualization. But when I hear, clean, safe, comfortable are table stakes, I'm like, yeah, like those are basic human needs. And, I don't want people to think we're being over dramatic here by saying, if the lighting level in the parking lot matters, and just getting over a threshold is not good enough. Like, well, we've got an old lighting system, but people can see, they can find their cars, right? Okay, you could look at it that way, or you could look at it from the perspective of, these folks are hardwired to seek safety. Everyone's hardwired. And there's a part of their brain that they are not even conscious of, that when they step into a super well lit place and there's no shadows that someone could be hiding behind, a part of them is going to be much more focused on like, I feel good here, I want to come back here. Unconscious. And if we ignore that and say, well, just good enough is good enough, like we're totally missing service opportunities.
Yeah. So first, before I agree with you, Luke, I do have to take issue with Maslow's hierarchy, because Maslow actually did not come up with a hierarchy. He did talk about human fulfillment, and others have put his ideas into a hierarchy. And so there is a strong argument that the hierarchy doesn't actually hold true. Now, what does hold true, that those are all human needs, and that there are certain needs that are fundamental to existence, right? And among those, as important or arguably more important than the physical needs of food and shelter are the social needs of love and belonging. Because if we didn't have those, we wouldn't survive to begin with, right? Because as infants, we're reliant on other human beings to meet those needs for us. And so we are dependent and hardwired for love and belonging. And why that's relevant when we talk about service is because that's what every human being is looking for. They want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, they want to feel understood and valued. So if we can communicate that in the way that we provide service, we've been able to fulfill those basic human needs that makes someone feel like they belong, feel like they want to participate, spend more time, come back again and again, right? If we can create belonging by the way we provide service, I think that's a huge win for any brand.
Yeah, so service is a lot of times part of the augmented product, right? So we have our actual product, which is the thing we're selling. The core product is that psychological need that our product addresses, right? Is it something of the heart, something of the mind, something of the gut, is it something of appeal, right? So every product addresses some core need of us as individuals. When we talk about the actual product, it's what we're selling, and then the augmented product is the service experience kind of around that, in how this ties together to build a brand. And there's some proverb that says, what you see and do nothing about is your standard, right? So when I think about service, like a lot of times it's about getting leaders to see, right? Because they're there every day. They're too close. They don't understand that the parking lot is dark. They don't understand that there's smudges on the door, because they're there every day. They're in that space every day. When we talk about objectivity has value, if you're in the organization, you are in the jar, but every customer is reading the label. And you cannot read the label from inside the jar. So there's this idea when it comes to service-based enterprise, like that's why they're shocked. That's why you have trusted people tell you about the experiences that they've had. But what you see and do nothing about is the standard. If I get into an elevator and there's surveillance and there's wires running across from the camera to the power that's behind the button panel, then whoever's running that facility thinks that that's okay. If there's lights out in the parking lot, if there's, no lit signs on the pathway to arrival, like, I don't need to talk to the leader. I understand what they believe is okay by the experience that I'm having. If they didn't believe that it was okay for the front desk staff to be rude to me, then I would not be experiencing a front desk person being rude to me. So this is about leaders being able to take an approach to clean, safe, comfortable, fun, fast, friendly, say, here's what we believe, here's how we're going to action this as a team. This is the experience our customers are going to have, and deliver exactly on that, like going and executing. How clean can it be? How safe can it be? How are we constantly leveling up this service experience and innovating that for the people that buy into our brand? Like, shitty standard, shitty brand, not that hard. But what my favorite thing to do is, like, let's go open our eyes. Let's go into this place that we work at every day and look at it like customers. Like, what does the guest see? They see the bottle cap on the floor. They see the light that's crooked, in a string of 1,000 lights on the building. The one that's tilted down, that's obviously out of shape, is impacting my experience. So it's this whole idea of, Luke, like, service is all about being overzealous. It's about making things perfect and having, like, not accepting that other members of my team accept those things as okay.
Yeah, and that idea of being overzealous and service being a manifestation of perfection for your brand, it really resonates with me. And I think the question it brings to mind is, like, how would I ever expect to be successful at service if I don't have clarity about what is the pinnacle of perfection for customers that I'm interacting with?
Right.
And I think a lot of places that, we connect with, there's some sort of ambiguous idea of, like, yeah, we do good guest service or we do good customer service, but they don't know explicitly what that means. They haven't yet said, this is the pinnacle of perfection that we are seeking every day, that our hope is that 100 out of 100 people who come in are going to have this experience.
Yeah.
But I think to get there, like, that takes a lot of work.
Takes a lot
Some
of
leader has to have a vision.
Yeah.
Mhm. And you're probably not going to get there overnight, right? There is definitely, and those of us who have perfectionist tendencies and have had to work really hard at overcoming those in order to get stuff done, we recognize that, the effort towards that goal is what will eventually get us there. But if we stop and look at the gaps, and yes, we need to address the gaps in order to achieve higher levels of excellence. But if we get stuck there, right, and we're focusing on that, so it's back to another episode when we discussed, where are we going? Having that vision of what excellence looks like, what perfection looks like, reminding ourselves to keep going towards that, even when things feel hard. I think that's a really important factor here, right? What is the vision of excellence? What is the standard that we strive towards? And how do we set accountability towards meeting those standards?
And how much do we believe it?
Yeah.
So this story popped into my head. I hadn't thought about this in years and years, but man, over 20 years ago, I was working retail, working in this little outdoor store in Rogers, Arkansas. And, I sold backpacks and outdoor apparel and boots and kayaks and canoes and stuff like that. And the owner had this cool idea where he was like, hey, we're going to have a mini fridge out here. And, I want every guest to be offered a, can of Dr. Pepper or Coke or water, whatever it is that they want. And, that was pretty clear that, we should offer people drinks. And I'd say 80% of the sales associates did that pretty regularly. Some repeat customers knew, and they'd come in, they might even grab one for themselves. But the owner was also obsessed. And I kind of have a suspicion he was trying to build character or something. So I think this was misguided. But most of what he talked about when he would visit a location was like, do you guys steal drinks? If you steal this, yeah, it's only a quarter that you're supposed to put in when you take a drink. But like, that's bad character if you don't leave a quarter. And I think he was trying to do some sort of development of his staff, but what he accidentally did was not believe strongly enough that everyone in there belonged and deserved a drink so strongly, right? If I really believed that, I would say drinks are free for anyone, no matter how much they want, anytime. And it would cost me maybe an extra $100 or $200 a month from Sam's Club, right? And if I really believed it, that's what I would say. And I bet you that we would get to 100% of guests get offered a drink. That would become an integral part, a differentiator for that organization, the way that I think he wanted it to be, but did not execute on. So, I share that story just to say, I think that's the kind of like fanaticism about service that we have to pull apart as leaders a little bit and say, what do I have to do? What does it take? Does it take me going to Sam's twice a month instead of once a month, right? To make sure that every customer that comes in here gets a drink and there's no withholding and there's no, sales associate feeling angry and grumbling because a guest gets a free drink and they don't.
I want to touch on like your idea of, man, you've got to know what you believe and you've got to believe hard. So establishing, like, if you're a senior leader in a business, what do you believe about service is the first thing. And then having the courage to push against the system of mediocrity in a world full of compromise. That's the whole thing. We want to, like, the world wants us to compromise. Here's what I think the guest experience should look like. Well, that's a lot of lift. It's a lot of work. Well, I thought that's what I was here to do, boss. Here's what I believe this experience should be for our guests. Yeah. And also this idea, like, if I'm going to believe something about the guest experience, guys, we know you have to believe the same thing about the employee experience. I can say all this about clean, safe, comfortable, fun, fast, friendly, but you have to level up the employee side of this before you can expect the guest or customer side to shine through.
Yeah. And that's the whole crux of the service profit chain, which we've discussed, in other episodes on the podcast here, but the employee or team member experience 100% impacts the customer or guest experience. And I think it's worth pointing out too, we talk about guest service, and in the service and hospitality industry, our customers are our guests. The way we train organizations in customer service, we have a framework called GUEST, and we do have an episode about that as well, where GUEST is an acronym. But what it calls to for me is that idea of treating every customer as a guest, right? So even if it is a car dealership, or even if we're selling metal, or even if we're, in a retail shop where people visit our store, or we go out, and offer our product in other ways, thinking of any prospect or customer as a guest that I'm treating, right? How attentive will I be, right? When someone walks into my home, what kind of experience do I want them to have, right? Am I paying attention to if they have a drink or not, if they're hungry, if they're comfortable, are they having fun, right? Are they enjoying themselves? Just having that framework of every customer is a guest, I think for me at least kind of changes the way I look at customer service, right? Because it calls to that experience of being a guest, even if, in any industry.
Well, and I think in this, if I'm the enterprise owner, right, or I'm the senior leader with the vested interest in enterprise productivity, it's the people that work for this organization that really grow the crop. Like, they are the seed corn, right? So how do you preserve, how do you nurture, how do you steward that seed corn? Like, I know for a fact you don't eat the seed corn, right? Because you have to, it has to grow the crop time after time, year after year. And I've got to have that. I've got to care for them in a way and know, like, I don't want to extract them or extract upon them to the point that they're no longer productive, right? I want to bring them into a community so that we can all flourish and thrive. So really good concepts. We understand the bounds of service. We activate that service through the big six. We know that we have to elevate. If we want to elevate our guest service, we have to elevate our employee experience, right? So those are the truths. And we know that what you see and do nothing about is your standard, and being black-hearted and non-compromising about perfection for the standards of service for your brand is okay. That's what makes you successful. And you will attract people that believe what you believe, and people that want to establish and grow great brands. And that's the work that we love to do. So if this is stuff that is integral to your business, this is the stuff that's in our wheelhouse. I love talking about it, love engaging with service organizations, businesses that sell commoditized product, and just want to make the world a little bit better. So signing off for today, Luke, final thoughts on guest service?
Yeah, my final thought would be, I think if you listen to this episode, you could potentially come away with like, well, there's one way to do guest service. And I don't think that's true. I think these principles are true, but there's a lot of ways to create fun and friendly that are unique and aligned to your brand. I was sitting here thinking about the soup Nazi on Seinfeld, and, we could have a whole conversation about, is that guy like successful despite himself? But I think if you look at these principles, like, there is a fun factor that's so tangible, and like, oh, let's go have this unique experience that's fun, right? That works. So if that's an extreme example of someone taking these principles and then putting their spin on it with their brand, like, there's a lot of other ideas that you could have about what does fun look like here? What does friendly look like here? What does fast look like here? And so, yeah, just excited for folks to take these principles and apply them, and just think through, what would we do here that if someone comes, all they want to do is come back the next week. All they want to do is come back the next day, because the experience was so amazing and pleasant. And, they're friends, right? They want to come hang out with their friends.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, just to me, just kind of going back to the three components of service, the bounds of service, right? The relationship, the meaningful relationships that we create with our customers and our guests, how responsive we are, how well we're able to anticipate their needs and respond to them. And then, what level of quality do we set, and what is the standard and the ideal for our organization of what quality looks like? How do we define quality and how do we deliver a quality experience every single time? So those are, I think, questions for every leader to consider in terms of any prospect or customer that interacts with our brand. What is their experience, right? Do they feel that connection, a meaningful relationship? Do they feel that we're responsive? And do they perceive that they're getting quality?
Yeah, and I thank you, Hannah, and awesome feedback. Like I just want to challenge our thought as we exit today. And every time we see a guest or a customer walk into our establishments, or maybe it's online, regardless, every time someone says, I'm going to buy something from you, let's think about it this way. This person is willing to buy from you and only you for the rest of their lives. That's exactly why they're engaging with you right now. Now, what are you going to do to make that true? Because they are willing. They would not be standing here transacting if they weren't willing to do business with you and only you for the particular product or service that you sell. It is our obligations as leaders to make that true. And can we create an organization good enough to capture that level of commitment and loyalty from our customer base? And that's the whole idea. That's I think our life's work and our life's journey here as an organization is to help other courageous leaders find that path to make that possible. So thank you guys for exploring the big six, kind of these guest service fundamentals with us today. Hopefully everyone will take something from them and something they can take back to their team and say, hey, here's where we're doing really well. Here's our opportunity as it relates to this big six. And let's action some things as a team. So thank you all very much. Until next time, let's go win a day.